When you understand how this market functions as a policy tool, it's really fascinating, and I think it's an amazing policy tool to address climate change at scale, and it's market based. So there's two ways to put price on carbon. You can put a carbon tax, which I don't like, or you could have a cap and trade system where we control the quantity of emissions and we let the market sort out the price. So here's how it works. So I'll use Europe as an example, but California is and the carbon markets in the United States are exactly the same. It's a regulated system run by governments, and it's mandatory inclusion. So any factory that emits more than 25,000 metric tons, so this is a big amount of emissions, any big emitter is included in the program by law. So it's mandatory. Once you're in the program, you are audited by the government every year, and you must give the government allowance permits that match your emissions. So if last year your factory emitted 1 million tons, that means by April of this year, you must give the government 1 million certificates. How do you get them? Mainly the permits are sold at auctions. So in California, we have 4 big auctions every year. In Europe, we have an auction every single day. And each one of those permits that is sold allows you to emit 1 ton. And so they're trying to capture the big emitters, which mainly are electric utilities, steel companies, cement companies, and chemical companies. These are the 4 big emitters. Now that total supply that the government sells every year is capped. And every year they lower that supply. The amount that they sell each year is lowered in Europe by about 2.2%, in California by about 3.5%. So the way to visualize this, because it's hard for people to get this in their head, is that in year 1 of the program, we sell, let's say in California, 300 million certificates. At the end of the year, we audit those companies. And if their emissions are 300 million tons, the companies must give back to the government those permits. Now they have complied. The government tears up the permits and destroys them. We then start year 2 of the program, and the government then sells 270 million. And then the third year, 250, 240. So we bring the cap down. We're playing musical chairs and we're pulling out a chair. So what we know with certainty, we know emissions are going down because there's less permits. They have to go down. What we don't know is, out of all those thousands of companies, which company indeed will choose to lower their emissions? And that's where the market, the invisible hand of the market and the price signal answers that question. And that's how we get what we call least cost abatement, because a carbon market has 2 goals. The first goal is to cap emissions and lower them. But the second goal of a carbon market is to achieve that first goal at the lowest cost to our society. And that second objective is very, very important. And that's where liquidity and price discovery in a liquid carbon market plays such an important role in achieving that second objective. Probably the most famous environmental economics graphic is this graphic here, which is the marginal abatement cost curve. And this is a stylistic example of, in any industrial economy, we've got the price of carbon dioxide per ton, the price per ton on the y-axis, and on the left axis, each box here represents a different industrial process. So making steel, making cement, making chemicals. Now, of course, some industrial processes, when the carbon price hits $10 a ton, the management team and the engineers in that business, they run their calculations. They say, hey, at $10 a ton, we can switch and make more money adopting this low carbon technology. So indeed, they switch. So either they don't have to buy the certificates in the auction anymore, so they have that savings, or if they're in a position where they're receiving an allocation from the government, and some vulnerable businesses do get a free allocation, which falls every year, they would be able to sell those permits to fund that low carbon technology. But key point here, Jeff, we climb this marginal abatement cost curve. So once we unlock the lowest hanging fruit, this industry abates, we then move to the next hanging fruit and the next and the next. And this is crucial because we're lowering our emissions in California, but we have the confidence that we're doing it at the lowest cost. Every time it comes down, it's the low cost guy who abates. Now, you can only make that claim of least cost abatement if you have two things: liquidity and price discovery in that carbon market itself. And that's why that ecosystem of having all these traders trading carbon, just indeed like in wheat or in corn or in oil, we want to have a liquid market for this price discovery.
Love it.
I just wanted to mention two other advantages of a carbon market. Obviously, capping and lowering emissions and ensuring least cost abatement is one, but the other really interesting ones are the fact that a liquid carbon market provides companies the ability to hedge. A carbon permit does not expire. So you can buy today and use it in 3 or 4 years to meet your obligation with the government for your emissions 4 years from now. So you can use these permits to hedge your forward carbon obligation. It also provides an ability for a piece of low carbon intellectual property, and someone invents a better scrubber to scrub out CO2. When they bring it to a venture capitalist, the VC will back that technology because they know there's a pathway to monetization. There's a pathway to, a tax doesn't do that, but a liquid carbon market provides it. That's very interesting. And I think the final point is these auction revenues. So in California, this is raising billions for the California Treasury. In most carbon markets, the revenues from selling the permits are segregated and they're used to invest in energy efficiency and low carbon initiatives. So it really is kind of a virtuous program to address climate change. And I guess the proof is in the pudding. You can see the numbers here. So by no means does a carbon market restrict GDP growth in any way. It's a market-based mechanism, so it really utilizes the power of the market, allocating those resources to both give you GDP growth and lowering emissions. And certainly in Europe, which is the longest running market, emissions are down 1 billion metric tons per year since the program was started in 2005. So we're in a world of 40 billion tons. 1 billion is moving the needle.